everyone, and happy Friday. It feels like I've been gone for quite some time with all of the things going on. So last week I was in Detroit at Automate having a blast. I met some really cool, interesting people and learned a lot about what's going on in the automation industry. So I am excited to be back today, especially with a familiar face. Hello, Holly. How are you doing?
Doing great. Great to see you, Megan.
Yes, welcome back, and thank you so much for joining again. You were initially on episode 62 of Mavens of Manufacturing, and I can't believe that was like double digits, and now I'm in triple digits of the episode. So, for those of anyone tuning in that have not heard of you, can you just provide us a brief, synopsis? And I'm going to direct them to episode 62 and the summary article that I have after this. But can you just kind of give us an overview of who you are and what company you work for, in case they missed that last episode?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the president and owner of American Metalcraft and Finishing Dynamics. It's been quite a journey. So what we do is we provide solid aluminum plate, rain screens, perforated panels, brake metal, column covers, ornamental metal, custom exterior fabrications for commercial buildings across the United States. Finishing Dynamics, which is our sister company, offers the metal coatings for those products. And both companies are housed an hour west of Atlanta in a little town called Villa Rica. We have a 78,000 square foot facility, and we're a one-stop shop. We do design assist, engineering, fabrication, and finishing all under one roof. So it's a lot of fun. It's a very creative process, which is what really appealed to me. I never thought in a million years that I would be in metal manufacturing. I was a child of the 70s, and growing up on the outskirts of Birmingham, Alabama, we didn't really have any women in those types of roles. Manufacturing, construction, architecture, I just didn't see women in those roles, nor was I really exposed to those as opportunities for career paths. So, late in the game, I graduated with an art history degree, thought I was going to be in the museum world, and did work at the High Museum of Art for about 3 years until I moved into marketing and advertising for the real estate world for about a decade. And my husband, when we got married, started bringing me in to do advertising pieces for the companies. And as I learned more about what the companies were doing, I was so curious because, again, I didn't have that background. I didn't have that exposure. And I really fell in love with the process. So I began to work full time, moved up into different leadership roles over the last 2 decades. And in 2017, I purchased American Metalcraft from my in-laws. And then in 2021, I purchased our sister company, Finishing Dynamics. So I'm very grateful and very proud to be a part of this very exciting industry.
What led you to purchase the two companies? Because that's a big, responsibility. And as for me personally, like when I started Zing Solutions and then Mavens, I had like this nauseating feeling in my stomach because I think there's like this sense of nervousness that you get when you try to start your own thing. So, you not being from the sector to begin with, like what truly inspired you? Like what did you like so much about what you were doing that you were like, okay, I'm going to buy these companies and be the leader of them?
Well, it was never anything that I had anticipated doing. It just basically over the last years before that purchase, I could see the opportunity for growth.
Okay.
I was very thankful. I had a lot of wonderful mentors on the production floor that taught me how to paint, that taught me how to rack. I got into working with the CFO at the time, and she trained me into that position. I started to understand the business side of things, but I really started to have this vision for where these companies could go. And, both my father-in-law and my husband are wonderful, wonderfully talented men, but they're nuts and bolts guys. And marketing and advertising is kind of the other side of the brain. And so the more and more that I talked about this vision, the more and more I really thought, how's the best way to implement this? And so my husband really encouraged me to think about doing the purchase. And that way I had full autonomy. I could really achieve what I was going for. I talked to our leadership team about it. They were behind me. And it was very scary. I'm not going to lie. Same thing, butterflies, very high anxiety, more just not so much about the companies, but more about me, just, making sure that, can I do this? I think all of us can relate to overthinking and, being our own worst critics. And so I'm nitpicking myself about, man, I don't know if I'm equipped for this. And I had a lot of encouragement from my support system and from my family and friends. And so stepping into that was a big leap of faith, but I knew I had the right people behind me. I mean, our team is amazing. We have tons of long-term leadership within our companies, and I knew that they were going to help me and support me and guide me through this transition. And so that really made all the difference in the world. I didn't feel like I was alone at the top. I felt like I was standing side by side with some amazing, amazing people.
That's awesome. I think that's one of the main messages I'm trying to get out there too with Mavens of Manufacturing. Like right now at even like the middle management level, we're only around 30%, I think I think it's less than 30% around the middle management level of leadership. And then when you get to that C-suite level, we're like 1 in 4 leaders. And it can be pretty lonely if you don't have the right support system or the mentor. So I think it's really cool how your journey, because when we first talked back in episode 62, you just, I think, bought the company and you were just getting into your leadership role. So can we dive into, and before we get to this next question, I do want to shout out Frank Lamb. Hello, Frank. Thank you for joining us. And I hope you turn into a lifetime listener and not just a first-time listener. And to anyone who's tuning in, feel free to drop your comments in the comment section. If you have questions for Holly, drop those in too. There is like a new feature on this system where I can highlight the live comments as they're coming up, but I'm going to hold off on that because it says it's still in beta. So we're just not going to touch that. So feel free. I'll pull your comments up, and I would love to have you ask questions as well. So Holly, what sort of like challenges have you faced since buying these companies, and what are some of your successes as well? Like what was like your lowest low and your highest high?
Ooh, that's a loaded question. Well, I'll tell you what, buying American Metalcraft was a leap of faith. And I had a couple of years before I purchased Finishing Dynamics to really understand some of the things that are required of business leaders. And, there were definitely some things where I needed to learn how to let go and delegate more. Things that sometimes I struggle to understand. I would sometimes not ask questions because I was like, I don't want to bother, them. They're working on this project. But then I realized the more that I ask questions and the more I dive in, the better I'm going to be for the next go round of things that I'm looking at. And so I had to find the courage to just say, can you explain this to me? I'm not exactly sure what this is. And everyone was very patient and very generous with their time and helping me. And I felt better equipped to do what I was doing every day that went past. The biggest challenge that I was very I could have never imagined in a million years was COVID, like most people, I think, in the world. And what was interesting about that was the timing of the purchase of the second company. 2020 happened, and because the way we work, typically we have a year or 2 years of backlog. These projects that we work on are really large, and so they take quite a while to get to our portion of the work. So 2020, we were looking good. Everything was still moving. We had, some delays on projects that were in states that were shut down. We had other projects that they really wanted to speed up that were in the medical industry. So we were kind of managing the ebbs and flows of our changing schedule. What was very kind of nerve-wracking was that we started to have a paint shortage. And the resin that we use in our paint had started to be less and less in supply. And it's geocentric to a place overseas. And so we were checking in with our suppliers. We had, this much work but it sounded like we were going to have this much paint. And how am I going to navigate that? And so we had one supplier that had kind of already said, hey, we're going to have to put you basically on rations because we are in such short supply. We're trying to get a little bit to everybody. We had another partner that said, hey, we've got plenty. I think you're going to be fine. We don't have any worries. So as this is happening, I'm going through negotiations with my in-laws for the second company. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is a paint company. There's a paint shortage. What am I doing? Is this crazy? Am I crazy to do this? So, take that anxiety of starting your own thing or buying a company and just 10x it, because it was just very unusual circumstances. And then finally, the night before that purchase, I found out that we were going to be put on allotments by our other supplier. And so I had a choice to make. It would have been very easy for me to just back out at that point and say, hey, I'm not going to sign the documents. This is too much. I'm too uneasy about the future. So again, I'm very thankful that I have a great support system. I have a lot of people in my orbit that I really admire and respect, and I trust their wisdom and I trust their discernment. And so talking to those people and doing a lot of soul searching and a lot of praying, I decided to move forward with the purchase. And so that was a big leap of faith and a big leap into the unknown that everybody on the planet was dealing with. And so navigating through those paint shortages was probably one of the most challenging times that we've had. We wound up navigating it, overcoming it. We figured out an alternative capability. So while the PVDF resin was in short supply, we figured out how to spray FEVE. We wound up with someone that is in our industry that decided to sell their business, and the owners of the business that were purchasing his were not going to do paint. And so he offered to sell his supply to me at just the right time. So there were just so many things that happened that helped us overcome that. Most importantly, again, the leadership team that I work with did such a great job navigating this, and all of us putting our heads together and getting creative and trying to figure out, okay, we have a ton of work, which is great news, but we've got to code it. So how are we going to get that finished, and how are we going to get that done? So I think we all learned a lot from each other during that time. And we really, I think we all trusted each other, but I think that trust went much deeper after going through that whole time together.
I do want to pull up Frank's because he's like, thanks, great interview. Always inspiring to hear from entrepreneurs. It's certainly always a leap of faith to start a business. Yeah, lots of praying, like, we get through this. One of the things that's like a big topic in our industry right now is, this skills gap. I don't think it's a skills gap. I think we are terrible storytellers, and we need to do a better job at promoting all of the cool opportunities within engineering and manufacturing. So as a leader, are you experiencing any of that stress with trying to pull in the right talent to help keep your business going? And, if not, what sort of things are you doing to really keep your employees happy and enjoying coming into work every day and being a part of your main mission as a company?
Yeah, that's a great question. We are very fortunate that we have very low turnover. And we really, our people are our focus and our priority. One of the things that I learned is I'm involved in several different professional organizations and some nonprofits. And during one of our board meetings, the question was asked, same thing, like, what can we do to retain more employees? What is important to the next generation that will make them think about these different types of careers that are in the AEC space and manufacturing space? And so they did a survey of different young men and women about what would be benefits that would be appealing to them. And one of the biggest ones was paid paternity and maternity leave. And so we implemented that in 2024. So we offer 2 weeks of paternity leave and 6 weeks of maternity leave paid for our employees after they've been with us for a year. Of course, we also are one of the few companies that offer free healthcare. So for all of our employees, they get free healthcare, and it's not, we don't do the bottom of the barrel, you know, the cheapest one. We try to do something that's really, truly going to be a benefit to each and every one of our team members. And that seems to have had a huge impact on retention. Paid time off, you know, we of course offer that. And we try to be compassionate, and we try to be active listeners. And that's something I know we'll kind of dive into, what it means to be an authentic leader and lead with transparency and vulnerability. But that's definitely a big part of it. I think has helped our retention, is that we do genuinely care about the people that we work with.
I really like that free healthcare because I've always dreaded the moments of like the companies that I worked with where they would come in with these different packages, and then you would have to read through each package and then try to figure out which one was the best for you, because the language was always so confusing to me because I'm
Yes.
not a healthcare expert by any means. So I was just like, well, what does this mean? And like, there's too many numbers for my brain to really wrap around. Like, I was just like, I am not a numbers person, and you're throwing too many ones and twos and zeros at me. I don't get this at all. So I think that's a really good, like, cool benefit for other companies to maybe consider, because it does cut back on the stress when, you know, you're dealing with humans that are already in a stressful environment sometimes when it comes to like meeting quotas and everything. So I think that's really cool. I love the paternity and maternity leave. I absolutely think that, you know, husbands and fathers need that chance too to bond with their kids, and even to help, you know, their significant other if they need to do that. I think it's awesome that more and more companies are offering that as a
Yeah.
benefit. So I do want to talk to you about, you know, authentic leadership, because that was one of the things that you brought up. And there is this conversation around, you know, this need for a mind shift change in engineering and manufacturing, especially if we want to recruit younger generations and even more diverse types of people to come in here, because it's typically been, you know, one sort of demographic, and a lot of people want to change that, because the more diversity you bring in, the more chance of coming up with better innovations and more solutions to some of the challenging problems that we have. And one of my good friends, Jim Mayer, he's called the culture connector, and he ties in leadership with how productive and the quality of your work, how it all trickles down to make your company really successful. So, in your own words, what does authentic leadership mean, and how important is it to for a company's success to have authentic leadership?
I think it's hugely important. One of the first things that comes to mind when I think about that is psychological safety in the workplace. Creating a space for people to share what is going on behind the scenes with their lives, I think is very important and very impactful.
Mhm.
So often I feel like, you know, you have maybe top performers that are coming in, and if you're not paying attention, and all of a sudden they start to, their performance is slipping, they're not coming in as their usual self. If you're not paying attention, that can be written off as, you know, they don't feel like doing something, or maybe they've got an attitude or something like that, when in reality, it could be something that's really going on with them personally. And so I feel like understanding that when you see behavior changes with your team, you see top performers all of a sudden not doing their best, or just kind of bowing out of what they normally do, rather than disciplinary action, a lot of times the first thing to do is a conversation. But the only way to have that psychological safety is for me to be that transparent as well. So,
Mhm.
you know, I've been through some stuff. I've been through some challenging times. And I shared that with our leadership team, because I wanted them to understand that, hey, if I come in tomorrow and I'm struggling a little bit, I just need you to know that this is what's going on, and I'm doing my best, but I'm going to need a little more support. Can you help me? And being able to feel comfortable asking for that, and creating that type of environment versus just, somebody admonishing you and writing you up before asking any questions, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was a period of time, especially within this sector, where we thought anybody who was leading a company or an owner were just made out of steel.
Yeah.
And like they couldn't show any vulnerabilities. They couldn't be wrong. They had to hide their mistakes instead of taking accountability for them. And it just was not a good situation for our sector. It like created some really toxic work environments. And I feel like we lost a lot of people because of that. And we're still kind of losing some people because of that, because there are still those misconceptions around our industry where, it's really hard work, you get dirty, it's dangerous. And we're not really showing like the cool opportunities in the different areas that exist within the sector. Vince said from Connecticut, forgive my tardiness. Vince, you're on time. No worries. We got the recording too that you can fall back on. Well, Holly, what have been some of the new things that you've been doing since we last talked about a couple of years ago? Like, have you taken any like educational courses? Have you done any presentations? Like, what are some of the new things that you've done since we've last spoke?
Yeah, absolutely. So I studied for my CDT certification, which is Construction Documentation Technician. I did that through the Construction Specifications Institute. It's a pretty intense class. You can do it as a weekend boot camp, or you can do it over a period of weeks. I kind of know how I learned, so I elected the 10-week online course. This was also during COVID, so there was about 60 people in my class online. It's very good course material if you ever want to learn about, for us, we're kind of on the bottom of the food chain when it comes to the built environment. We're on the exterior of a building, so we're going to be the last thing typically that's going up and going on. So what this course taught me was really more about what happens at the very beginning stages of schematic design with architects and designers, and talking to owners reps, and kind of how all the documents flow down to our particular division and all the other trades that are involved in the built environment. So it was really a great education. It gave me an opportunity to really understand what architects and designers need from us as a manufacturer. And I feel like it made me a lot more in tune with the design community. So that was really great. Something I did as kind of an outside thing, we were talking earlier about raising awareness, especially to young girls and the next generation, about all the different wonderful careers that are out here in the manufacturing and AEC space. And one of the ways that I started thinking about that was I attended AIA Aspire, which is a Southeast conference, usually in Asheville is where that takes place in the fall. And I was privileged to see Jennifer Farr Davis speak. She holds the Guinness World Record for hiking the Appalachia Trail. When she first did it, there was not a women's record. So she broke the men's record, and then she set her own. And so what I loved about her presentation was that she was speaking for 300, 400 architects, manufacturers, and she, for 45 minutes, talked about her journey of getting started with hiking the Appalachia Trail when she was 20, and then, doing it again at a different age, and doing it again when she was a little bit older, and that whole process. And it had nothing to do with architecture, but you could have heard a pin drop, because her story of growth, her story of coming into her own, finding courage when she was really nervous about taking this on yet again, was just so inspiring. And then the last 15 minutes, she tied it into how those things that she discussed paralleled the architecture and design world. And so with that in mind, I created my own presentation. I started thinking about my own story and how perhaps I could tie that into business leadership in all sectors, and how to overcome challenges in your life. So I developed a series called Get Naked, Harnessing the Power of Authentic Leadership. And naked is Naked, not Nekked. That's something else.
So why did you pick that title for your presentation, and what are some of the main points that you touch on within
Sure.
that presentation?
Well, it's a showstopper. When you see that, there's about 1,000 things that could be, and the
Mm-hmm.
marketer in me was trying to come up with a title that would stand out, and so I just kind of landed on that because of that reason. But basically, I walk through a big challenge that happened in my life. Long story short, but my husband and I struggled to have a family. And we had our miracle child and then went down the road of adoption because we had kind of exhausted all the other options at that point. We spent 2 years on an international adoption. We sold everything we owned except for a car and a house and traveled overseas to Kazakhstan. And when we arrived, we realized that things were not right and we were going to be leaving without children for a variety of reasons. It was a really heartbreaking experience. And I know there's a lot of people that have been through that journey of infertility and struggled. And so it's just something that it really was a very challenging time personally, and also, trying to provide for the family, trying to take care of my daughter here, and wondering if we were going to try again. And we had an opportunity to host an older child from overseas, from an orphanage, and had the opportunity to potentially adopt. The children that come over on these hosting programs think that they're on a vacation from the orphanage, when in actuality they're just going to visit and stay with these hosting families for 5 or 6 weeks, and then those hosting families will make a decision as to whether or not it's a forever family kind of situation, or if not, no hearts are broken. The children go back with a great experience in America. They get love, they get medical care, dental care while they're here. And so I had a choice to make. Yet again, it was another leap of faith kind of test. Was I going to step out in faith with the potential risk of getting heartbroken again?
Right.
Or was this something that I was willing to step out in faith once more? And so we did decide to do the hosting program, and adopted my daughter at the age of 13, my older daughter. So it worked out very well, because had we not gone through that 2-year period and then gone through the heartbreak of not having those children at that first adoption, we never would have looked at adopting an older child. So the lessons I learned through that were, risk assessment, trust, critical thinking, relying on a support system, because at that time in my life, I was like what you described earlier. I was going to do everything myself. I wasn't going to rely on anybody. It was just going to be my way or the highway. And I just felt embarrassed about asking for help. And that was kind of the pivotal point where things in my life changed, and I realized how much I needed other people, and I needed other people's wisdom, and I needed other people's support and compassion. And so that really changed the game on my leadership mindset. Understanding, again, kind of that risk assessment, knowing when to step out in faith, knowing when that risk might be too great, being able to trust others. And my philosophy, instead of doing everything myself, became delegate and empower. And my philosophy on hiring became, I want to hire people that are smarter than me so they can tell me what to do. And it changed the game. And so much of that came from this personal experience. And then when looking at the sense of psychological safety I wanted to create, I now had this experience to draw from, so that now I could see everyone that I worked with in a new light, with eyes of compassion, rather than just, hey, we just got to get this done and we got to get this out the door, and I don't care how it gets done kind of mentality. So the whole presentation is kind of about that mental shift, and some of the foremost common symptoms of, apathy and fear, unmet needs that you might see in the workplace, and how to overcome those. and then how important active listening skills are in developing a rapport and an authentic relationship with those that you're in partnership with at the workplace or at home.
Yeah, I think that's really cool because you're bringing back the human side to a place where sometimes we get lost in all of the technology and the hard work and the grind and the grit. And yeah, you start to treat people like people, and they notice that and they remember that, and they're going to be more loyal to you as an employee. So I think that's really cool that you're taking such a personal. And to any parent out there who has struggled, I know a bunch of moms who've gone through that same, difficulty of starting a family, and sometimes they feel like, well, maybe if I didn't work so hard, or maybe if I wasn't such a career person, I would have a better chance of, starting a family. And it's just that guilt that we carry with us, right? And I think your
Yes.
story would inspire them so much to just know, keep going. It has nothing to do with that. Like, there sometimes things just happen, and
Yeah.
it's not because it's not because you enjoy working. Like, sometimes we can't control things. In terms of like leadership growth and becoming a better leader. Again, as I mentioned, the statistics for women leaders, especially in male dominated industries, isn't very high. So, what advice would you give to our men allies who are out there, even men who might not be our allies, on how to really support women in their career trajectory? Like, what sort of things should they do or say or not say to really get women to continue to pursue climbing up the ladder? Because I know in some companies, I don't want to say there's an ignorance, because I think that's being mean, but some, because we've been male dominated for so long, some people just don't think, oh, these things would be helpful to help women climb up the ladder. So what sort of advice would you give to them?
Well, I was very fortunate in that, my two closest male figures, my husband and my father-in-law, and if I would also say my dad, if he was in this business, he was in pharmaceutical sales for many years, but they both were so encouraging to me, and they believed in me. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's so important, especially coming from somebody that's already in this field. Let's say, for example, I'm all the way back in where I'm just starting out and I'm just thinking about this. I would have
Mm-hmm.
not made the decision to come into this field, most likely, because I would have felt intimidated because I didn't know as much as everybody else did. And I was a young woman trying to find my way. And this is, metal manufacturing especially is primarily male dominant. But their encouragement and their growth mindset for me really made me feel more confident in taking that step forward. And so I think it's really important, if you're in the manufacturing world already and you've got young women or emerging professionals that are potentially thinking about taking on a role at your company, just encouraging them, providing that space for them, but also, supporting them, just being there. If they need extra help, be there. If allow them to feel comfortable asking you questions
Mm-hmm.
if they need help. And I think that's huge. The other thing that I would suggest is there's a lot of wonderful organizations around manufacturing and construction. Women in manufacturing is huge, and there's both men and women in that organization. There's NAWIC, the National Association of Women in Construction. Again, it's multi-member, men and women. Both support those organizations. And that's a great place to go for those types of events, because you get to meet a lot of other people in different
Mm-hmm.
areas of manufacturing or construction. And it's just going to help everybody connect with more people and have more conversations around that, around how to be a better ally and how to be a mentor and lead and help women succeed in these industries.
Yeah. So for any gentlemen who are listening on this particular episode, I had a question directed towards me from one of my guy friends, and he is like, "Well, some of these events have women in whatever breakfast or mingle or whatever." He's like, "Are guys even invited to those events?" I'm like, "Unless we specifically say no guys, yes, you're always welcome to come in. And I'm like, I'll invite all of you right now. Like, come to these events, talk to the women. WIM actually did an event at the beginning of this year called the Men as Allies event. And it was such an eye-opening experience because there were a lot of guys who, you know, their way of trying to help. One guy was like, I have a hard time separating my fatherly like duties from like manager type duties. So like I always have this like protective type of vibe when, you know, these women are like, I can do this, stop worrying about me. And
Yeah.
he's like, but I have daughters at home, so it's like I need to protect you kind of thing. And he's like, I have to stop blending that together. Like I have to trust that they are capable of doing their job instead of like being overly protective with them, which I was really thought was really interesting. And then my friend Lisa was there, and she was on a panel, and she goes, we had a networking event yesterday, and she's like, there's what, maybe 5 women here right now compared to the 30 men that are here. She's like, how many of you approached us on purpose? She's like, you didn't do that. You went and talked to your guy friends. And she's like, this is supposed to be an allies event. None of you came up to me to ask me any questions. So I thought it was just really interesting, like the awkwardness that is there, and you know, how do we interpret it and overcome it. We do have some comments coming in. LinkedIn user, I don't know who this is, if you don't want to drop your name, but thanks, Holly, for sharing your thoughts. We are a sum of all of our experiences, good and bad, people, teams, companies who realize and utilize that are always inspiring in different ways. Vince is pledging his male allegiance officially.
That's
You are
great.
awesome. And then Courtney is, WIM has been an incredible outlet for our company to network and build relationships, women and men. It's truly such a cool event. And if you are not a member, I highly suggest becoming a member. They have chapter events all over the United States. They're even international. They have chapters in other countries now. And their national event is coming up in October, and it's going to be in Chicago this year. And it's their 15th anniversary. So many great things that I can say about WIM. I hope you guys all check it out and join. Even if you're a man, I hope you join as a member because it's really beneficial and you learn a lot and you meet a lot of cool people, especially cool women. So please join them. One of the things that you attended was MetalCon, and I didn't even know that was a show. So can you kind of describe what that show is and like what your involvement with that show was? I think they already had it or they're about to have it, but what is MetalCon? Because I've never even heard of it before.
Yeah. So MetalCon is basically all things metal, primarily architectural, roofing. There's sometimes kind of like, it's not like FabTech where there's a lot of machinery, but everything that kind of touches the metal world is in that space. So they have a trade show. They have CEUs during that time. They try to flip-flop it, I believe, the location. Sometimes it's on the West Coast, sometimes it's on the East Coast, but it's an annual event. I was invited to do a women's breakfast for one of the mornings of MetalCon and presented the Get Naked presentation, and was really a great time. Got a lot of really good questions, and some ladies that came up to me and shared their own struggles and personal challenges with the infertility and starting a family. And also that led into leadership questions and balancing the work and family life. So it was a really wonderful time. But anybody that's involved in metal, or if you'd like to learn more about walls and roofing and all the things, that would be a great one to take a look at. Definitely check it out. I believe it's usually in the fall. Yeah. And then CSI Southeast Regional Conference was recent as well. I know we were talking about that earlier.
Mm-hmm. What is CSI? Because you mentioned that before, and I know they have some regional events. So what does CSI stand for, and why should people know about that organization?
Absolutely. It is the Construction Specifications Institute. And what I like about it is it incorporates not only architects and specifiers. Specifiers are the people that write construction documents, but it is product reps. Sometimes we have GCs that, employees of GCs are members. sometimes owners reps or members, manufacturers, but anybody that kind of touches the built environment. And so it's a great group of people. It has chapters all over the country. And then we have a national conference annually, and then all the regions do regional conferences. I got involved in 2018, and it really expanded my network in the built environment. I got to meet a lot of other product reps, and sometimes we will cross connect people. I had somebody that was in Windows that heard one of his friends talking about metal and was like, oh, well, I need to connect you to Holly, and vice versa. That's happened to me where I've been like, oh, you need doors, I need to connect you to this person. So it's just a great networking organization. In the Atlanta chapter, we meet once a month. It's usually the first Monday of months, September through May. We usually take a break for summer, but it's a technical session. I'm losing my, I can't talk. Technical session that's usually provided by a product rep, and that's for AIA credits. So any architects that need their credits for their license every year, I think they need 18 to 24. And so they need those learning units. So we provide one of those. There's typically a little happy hour. We have innovation nights where product reps come and set up tables to kind of show what types of products they're offering. And then we have a dinner and a dinner program. And usually those speakers are going to be speaking on the economy, could be presenting a project that their firm worked on and some of the innovations that came out of that. Could be somebody speaking about the advancements of AI in the built environment. But it's always something really informative and really educational. So I've been a member for several years. I'm stepping up to be president of the Atlanta chapter this year. So I'm very excited about that. And I've spent the last 3 years as part of the Southeast Region Board and have been a part of planning the conferences. And it's been a ton of fun. But I'm going to roll off and get more locally focused this next year.
That's one of my favorite things to do, is to help plan events and conferences, because you meet so many cool people and you learn so many new things. I don't know if this is the same LinkedIn user that's thanked you for sharing your experiences, but Megan, the men normally ask ladies in any profession as a sign of respect if they need any help. And the culture is changing towards providing opportunities for both sexes. Yes, I do agree with that to a point. I'm very competitive, however, and I think we could be a little faster in creating those opportunities for both sexes. And I just would like to see more women like Holly in leadership positions. Because again, as I mentioned earlier before, right now we're at 1 in 4 C-suite level executives in the manufacturing and engineering industry. Engineering globally, we only represent 13%, which I think is really low on a global scale. So having these types of conversations really raises awareness and lets women know that, hey, you can climb up the ladder and be a leader of your own company. And Holly just purchased 2 companies, so that's amazing. I think if we can see that, more younger women will be inspired to join our sector. I don't know. Oh, that's an advertisement. Yes, I am. Okay. I would agree. So I don't know why LinkedIn's not sharing your name. I'll have to look after I sign off of here, but I do appreciate your feedback and your comments. So thank you for tuning in. If any of you have any questions for Holly, feel free to drop those. But Holly, one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, do you have a challenge for other leaders out there? Like what would a challenge or call to action be from you to anyone in this sector?
I would say be a lifelong learner and get involved. I feel like my leadership style changed so much, even in the last 2 years, just by being in a lot of these different organizations that touch my industry. I feel like I've learned so much by meeting other leaders, and also just by meeting even if they're managing a department versus being a business owner. There's always wonderful conversations that take place. And I walk away with something, usually at almost every one of these events, that I'm like, oh, I need to think about that. Or how could I use this for our companies? And so I just love that there's this endless flow of information. And so often there's some really good parts of that information that I can turn around and reflect on and use that to improve my companies, improve myself, and try to get better at what I'm doing. And so rather than treating leadership as maybe a 9 to 5 or whatever your working hours are, really open yourself up to having a couple of different nights, maybe a month, where you can go to some sort of networking organization and meet other people, whether they're in your industry or not. It's just, talking to them as business owners and learning from each other. I just think that'll be a game changer.
Vince said, it's obvious to me that Holly is a natural born leader. I would agree. Well, Holly, what can we expect to see from you in the future? Like, what are some of the things you're currently working on? Are there any events that people can try to meet you in person at? Like, what are some of the top things that you're excited for in the future?
Sure. So I'll be at the CSI National Conference. That's going to be in Cleveland, Ohio in October. And I'm on the road quite a bit. I'm doing lunch and learns all across the country, virtually and in person, for architecture firms. I also offer the Get Naked series as a CEU for architects and designers. I have presented that to several firms over the last 12 months, in addition to our product, more particular with the emphasis of products and how to use those products in projects, those types of CEUs. So lots of traveling in my future, that's for sure. I am part of several different nonprofits. One, we have a meeting every year in Florida in person, but it's the Finishing Education Foundation. And I'm hoping we'll, at some point do a fundraising event for that. We are working on the Architecture Foundation of Georgia. We're working on an event this year, probably this fall, as a fundraiser. In both of those organizations, we raise scholarships for students that are considering a career in architecture for AFGA, and of course, finishing for the Finishing Education Foundation. So those fundraisers really help to contribute to the scholarships that we provide. So definitely this fall, I'll be at one of the events for either of those nonprofits. And then, of course, the Build and Design Awards will be in December for Atlanta. So I will definitely be in attendance for that as well. Probably will be a sponsor.
That's really good. Didn't you recently win an award?
Oh, yeah. I got the Titan 100 award for Georgia. And that was really special. That is an award given to the top 100 CEOs for the state. And so I was really, really excited and super grateful to have that recognition. I was really excited to meet a lot of the other leaders that were at the event. It was at the Delta Museum in Atlanta, just beautiful event. So I was humbled and surprised and really excited to be part of that.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations to that. And Holly, I just want to thank you again for joining me once again on Mavens of Manufacturing. If you didn't see her first interview on Mavens, it's episode 62. You can catch that at YouTube. I'll be releasing an article next week just to kind of highlight the top key moments of this conversation. Holly, if anyone has any questions for you or just wants to connect with you, what's the easiest way to do that and where should they go?
Sure. I'm on LinkedIn almost daily, so please send me a connection request. I'd be happy to accept that and stay in touch with you. Also, my email is holly@americanmetalcraft.com. If you have any questions or if you want to learn more about what we do and our products, I'm happy to help.
Awesome. Well, Holly, thank you again. And to anyone who's tuning in, we did just get a comment 1 second. Vince said, congrats on the award, Holly. Thank you, Vince, for tuning in.
You.
I want to thank everyone that tuned in and offered comments during this episode. Tune in for next week. I will be releasing an article just summarizing the key points, like I mentioned before. I do have some exciting news for Mavens for 2026. I'm actually going to be cutting back to only 12 episodes throughout the year. This way I can actually focus more on the storytelling aspect of things. So not only will you meet the individual, but you will also hear more about their backstory, their why, their passions, what their company is all about, the types of products and services they do, and even the things that they're doing within their own community and how they're getting more people involved in engineering and manufacturing. So stay tuned for content around that. I'm really excited to revamp Mavens and also get a little bit of my own personal time back, and just creating more storytelling content. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend. It is Memorial Day weekend, so stay safe out there. Take care of one another, and I will talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
This episode of Mavens has been sponsored by Fresh Horizons Group. Fresh Horizons Group is a family-run company that was founded on the premise of helping organizations and businesses better tell their story through high-quality branded apparel and promotional items. Freshen up your brand by contacting Fresh Horizons today at freshhorizonsgroup.com.